Hi, I'm Jesse Hirsh, and welcome to another episode of MetaViews, recorded live in front of an automated audience. And today we're going to talk about a rather pressing subject, the danger of AI? Exclamation point, question mark, with Jamar Doc Montgomery. And, Doc, I'll be frank, I lifted that title from one of your events. So I have no idea what that means. We will be exploring it, as always, in our fast-paced, action-packed podcast, which, to give you a bit of a heads up, we've kind of been evolving. You know, we are a knowledge podcast, a technology podcast, a future podcast. We're actually kind of becoming a bit of a game show, and we start every episode with our first segment, which is the news. And we start with the news partly because MetaViews has a daily newsletter, which we like to promote. But really, we like to throw to our guest and say, on an intuitive level, what have you been paying attention to? What have you been seeing out there in what is arguably the most action-packed news cycle ever known to the news industry? And this is really an opportunity for our audience to get to know you, but also for you to play the first test in our game. What should we know about? Like, what are you paying attention to that you think we should be paying attention to?
Man, this is exciting. The thing that's got my attention currently is J.D. Vance, his speech that he gave at the Munich Security Conference. And one of the reasons why this has been so interesting to me is that you're seeing a major shift in how our politicians and our leaders are speaking to the rest of the world. From Pete Hegseth giving his speech to the new leadership at the Department of Defense, to the speech that J.D. Vance has given at the Munich Security Conference. It is literally showing how the United States is shifting in its policy towards Europe, policy in what our priorities are going to be for the United States. And, you know, the most recent thing was seeing President Trump do a lap around the Daytona 500, right? So you're literally seeing how there's been the shift in policy, and then once again, President Trump, hate him, love him, like him, right, or dislike him, how he knows how to connect with the American people, and the things that are primarily or authentically American, like NASCAR and a Daytona 500. I think this is the first time that I've ever seen a president do a lap around and doing it in the beast. So once again, you're seeing this major shift in how our politicians interact with the people, how they interact with the culture, and to recognize that in order to control the culture, you have to be part of the culture. And to control the narrative, you have to insert yourself into the narrative. And once again, from President Trump taking that lap around the Daytona 500 to the speech that J.D. Vance was given at the Munich Security Conference, where this is a totally different tone in terms of what America's expectations from Europe and from NATO are versus what NATO should be able to expect from the United States. Those are the three things that have really gotten my attention, and including, like I said, Pete Hegseth, Department of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Now, to follow up on that, I was also interested in JD Vance following up that Munich talk with one he gave in Paris at the AI summit, which was a huge summit of governments from around the world to really talk about AI. And we'll talk about that later if we make it to our feature conversation. But you did pass the news segment. Congratulations. And I have a quick follow-up. You often describe yourself as your favorite rapper's political advisor.
Yep.
Which begs the question, who's your favorite rapper?
My favorite rapper? Oh, man, that's a great question. I have a few favorite rappers. One of my favorite rappers is Kanye West, right? Otherwise known as Jay. E40, Scarface. And Scarface is probably one of the greatest storytellers in the last 30 years.
Yeah, the Ghetto Boys were an absolute OG group, to your point, on the level of storytelling, because the way in which they would tell stories in songs was only preceded perhaps by Slick Rick, the original kind of storyteller. Did you ever hear of a MC from Oakland, the Bay Area, called Paris?
No.
So he's my favorite rapper. He was big in the 90s. He has put out a few records since then, but he's definitely aging. But I raise him because he did. I'm trying to remember the name of the record, but his most controversial record was when George W. Bush the first was in office, and it was called Bushkilla. And it was all about him going through a fantasy of breaking into the White House and killing George Bush. And it got a lot of press and a lot of controversy.
I bet it did.
So I'm not sure that, he would have a political advisor, but I love the phrase you use. But we will now go to our second segment of every MetaViews, which is WTF.
I'll expand a little bit.
Or what's the future? And I'll give you a chance to expand.
Absolutely. I'll expand a little bit. And so the reason why I said your favorite rapper's favorite political advisor is because Ye or Kanye West asked me to accompany him and advise him during his meeting with President Trump.
So while I do know that because I researched you, you don't want to disclose that on this podcast at this time because you will discredit yourself with my audience. And I don't want you to do that because I want them to have an open mind because I think you've got a lot of really brilliant stuff to share. And that's why we're at our second part of the program, which is WTF, or what's the future? So where on the news segment, we were saying, what are you paying attention to? What are you looking at? This is the same idea, but on the event horizon, right? So when you're looking out on the future, when you're sort of trying to get a sense of what's coming at us, what do you see? What do you think our audience needs to see so that they can, best be prepared, or at the even better, be able to take advantage of the opportunities that come with it?
Oh, well, the area that I love the most is crypto and blockchain. And one of the things that I'm seeing is this shift of a crypto being something on the sidelines to something that is now on major headlines. And I've been in the crypto space since 2016, actually heavily being a creator and being a builder since 2016. And now in 2025, to watch how the president has appointed a crypto council, right, a crypto czar, and people that are actually pro-crypto. You've also seen a major shift and I'm finally glad that people in the industry have taken my advice of doing some real political lobbying for crypto and the entire industry. So what is on the future? You're going to see this major integration of blockchain and AI. And AI, many people overhyped it. It's overhyped in the near term, underhyped in the long term, and blockchain was overhyped in the short term, but underhyped in the long term as well. And those two technologies were actually made for each other. As we're seeing that there's this need for attribution of data and attribution of models and attribution of where you're referencing your information from. Now, blockchain allows for you to be able to do that. And now you can create your AI models so that there are markers. So anytime that you create a new input, or excuse me, anytime that you create a new input and then you don't like your particular output, you're able to look at the model and look at the data, where the data actually came from. Because as you and I both know, is that these are just statistical models that have figured out how to create language. So if you're looking at where you got your data from, then you are given the opportunity to clean up that data, right? One of the things that we always say is if you think that you got clean data, then you really don't know your data. And we're really seeing that with now that large language models have open access to the internet and are uncovering things that we never thought were there, and have access to things that have been forgotten about, I should say.
Or overlooked. And
Or overlooked.
yeah, right on. I think that's a really empowering view of the future, because it really centers the human as the person to take advantage of, to your point, this rapid and transformational change, especially when you see AI and blockchain kind of bringing their strengths together. So that leads us into our feature conversation, and congratulations for making it past our first two segments. What I do with each guest in our feature is I kind of look at what they're talking about, I look at their area of interest, and I pick three themes or three pillars to then kind of construct our conversation. And in your case, I picked politics, the danger of AI, and decentralization, because they seemed like they were, themes we could actually get into a really interesting and in-depth conversation with. And you said something in the news segment, which I thought was really quite profound and insightful, which is, in our contemporary world, you really got to be in the thick of it. You got to be in the culture. You got to, I've increasingly been saying what used to be the kind of word on the street has now become the kind of rhythm of the digital world. And the politicians who can tap into that, the entrepreneurs who can tap into that, are going to be successful, right? Because they understand what people are thinking about. They understand what people are talking about. So I want you to fuse that insight with what you were just describing a moment ago in terms of how you've been encouraging the crypto industry to start lobbying and to start finding friends in government. So what is right now kind of the politics of crypto? Because it does seem to be having its moment. It does seem to be kind of reaching, dare I say it, a normalization when it comes to the way in which people think about it. But again, I want you to link that to that beginning insight of, you kind of got to be there. You got to be part of it to really understand it, especially in the political context.
Well, there's been a lot of, I would say that the crypto space is maturing from a project, moving from projects to actually building companies, and now to even building enterprises. And many of the folks that got into crypto that came from corporate and enterprise backgrounds understood that companies like Circle, companies like who else? Circle, Coinbase, right? Even FTX. But that's a whole nother story. They understood the importance of engaging politically with the legislators and also with the regulators. Many of the people that are in crypto didn't have that kind of background of either a corporate background or a political background. All they had was a tech background. And so tech people aren't thinking like political people. Political people aren't thinking like tech people. Corporate and business people aren't thinking like political or business people or technical people. And I recognize, given my background in politics, in business, and in tech, was that there was a major gap. So prior, we weren't seeing these companies, except for the big boys, lobbying their politicians. Now, with some of the projects and companies that I have advised, you're starting to see more engagement with the state and local legislators and politicians, because you can touch them, you can show the direct impact. So when I talk about if you want to change the narrative, you have to be part of the narrative, and in order to be part of the narrative, you literally have to be involved in it. So if you know that there's this negative thing that's being said about you, oh, it's for scammers, oh, it's for money launderers, right? You have to engage with the people who are in power to show them that it's much more than that. And one of the places that I've seen, one of the people that I've helped do that, as they started to take in heed to that, they're seeing real results they're seeing real results from listening and taking my advice and consultation.
Well, and if I might interrupt and ask a follow-up question, I think to your point, where my audience in particular is perhaps in the dark or still unfamiliar, is where the policy world is headed with this. Because I think you're right when you use the word maturing, and I think your point about the different skill sets that are finally coming together is changing the game, right? It's allowing there to be a more intelligent policy discourse rather than a fear or ignorance based policy discourse. So if you could, from your perspective as someone who's been kind of in certainly the crypto space, but also in the political space for quite a while, what is the Trump administration seeking to do? Like, we've heard stuff around like a Bitcoin reserve, and certainly, the champion the industry part makes sense. But what doesn't make sense to me, and I think to a lot of people, is kind of how the crypto world connects to government, because usually there was, to your point, quite a gap. So, what is the Trump administration like? What is their policy approach? What are they trying to do in terms of, positioning America as one of the leaders globally when it comes to the technology of crypto?
Well, one of the things that I advised President Trump was making sure that we had greater blockchain education, and making that part of the curriculum of, if you actually, and this is long before he was talking about making the United States a leader in digital assets, that if you want to be a leader, then you need to be leading the children in these 21st century technologies. Well, what he's currently doing right now is that, as we know, President Trump is pro-business, and I don't like. Let me rephrase that term. He's for business creation, and he's for enterprise growth. That's what he's for. So now he's trying to create an open lane but some of the people around him understand that there's certain people that he needs to be talking to if you want to gain credibility in the space. And one of the things that set President Trump apart from any other president was the fact that he spoke at Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville, Tennessee. That is like one of the largest crypto conferences that you can go to outside of consensus. And so the fact that he spoke there, it says, okay, he's got the right people on his team. He's trying to make sure that and wealth to be created, he wants it created in the United States. He wants to be able to say that it originated in the United States. The challenge is regulation helps keep the greater public safe, but it also has a way of stifling innovation. Well, if I am not ready to integrate crypto into my greater financial system, then there's a lot of space for innovation, because I can have regulation that is made specifically for crypto, or I can accept EXCEPT, accept crypto from certain regulations and allow them to be able to grow in the way that it needs to. there's this back and forth. We're not going to have a stable coin, or we're not going to have a CBDC. Yet you're talking there's stable coin regulation now, and the only difference between a government sponsored coin and a Senate in control of it, or whether you're going to have the United States Treasury in control of it. So right now he's trying to figure out what exactly he wants to do and what does that look like for the future. If he is truly for empowering the American people, then it will be something that is controlled by the Treasury versus putting it in the hands of the Federal Reserve.
And, let me ask you a stupid question as a kind of follow-up to that. You mentioned Circle, you mentioned stable coins. What is ultimately, especially from your or from the Trump administration's view, what is the relationship between the US dollar and, say, Bitcoin? Is, it meant to be, oh, we may have lost you altogether. Yeah, lost you altogether.
I want to make sure I want to understand your question first. Are you saying what is the relationship between the United States dollar and Bitcoin from a use standpoint, or I want to make sure I understand?
No, this is a political question. Right now, the value of the US dollar is independent of the value of a Bitcoin.
Yes.
Perhaps some of the most profitable companies within the crypto industry are stable coins like Tether or Circle. Given the Trump administration is the first White House, the first U.S. government that is taking crypto seriously, to your point at the start, is getting right into it, is understanding it, is bringing people who understand it into the administration. Again, it's a stupid question, but what is the relationship between these two global currencies? Is Bitcoin a threat to the global primacy of the US dollar? Is the US dollar a threat to the global primacy of Bitcoin? Or are they, married and a couple that will proceed in the world in harmony and love, finding prosperity for all? Those are 3 of a dozen potential examples. But I'm curious if you could, kind of hypothesize on what the growing relationship politically might be between these two powerhouse currencies.
Well, you're asking in that one simple question are like 10 different questions,
and I'm expecting either an answer in under 300 words, or you could take issue with any of the assumptions, but not all of them.
I'm not even going to take issue with any of the assumptions. What I'm going to say is that the Bitcoin is more of a threat to SDRs, which are known as special drawing rights, than they are to the United States dollar. Once again, one of the reasons why countries are afraid of integrating Bitcoin into their financial systems in a major or significant way is because your financial systems are always part of your national security system. They're always part of the national security apparatus because your financial system is an attack vector. Now, the open secret in cryptography community is that we already have a table track of coin, and the reason all those crypto 98% of cryptocurrencies are not quantum resistant, meaning that you can utilize quantum technology and quantum computing to break the encryption of these cryptocurrencies. The thing is that there are only a few countries that have those kinds of capabilities: the United States, China, Israel, and one or two other companies in other two countries as well that have that current capability. So if the United States was to all of a sudden, or if somebody was to attack the Bitcoin ledger, everybody would know that it's one of the three, four usual suspects. So it is more of a threat in SDR that is based upon everyone's currency. You now have something that can be of high value, can be moved quickly, and is in a allows for a businessman or business person or company to transact with another country without having to utilize their own currency, but can be part of the strategic reserve that that country has in order to do business with another country. One of the challenges that we're seeing is that if you are part of SWIFT, or if you are part of any of these banking networks that touch the United States, then you come under jurisdiction of the United States. You come under jurisdiction of either the Patriot Act or the Homeland Security Act. And a lot of countries don't necessarily like that kind of intrusion into their privacy, into their systems. They do not like that the United States dollar, for all intents and purposes, can operate as a surveillance tool. So is it a threat? Is Bitcoin a threat to United States dollar? Not in the sense of everyday use. It is more of a threat to how we use SDRs, and also whether or not people decide that they're going to bank with an institution or look towards alternative banking means such as cryptocurrency.
That was a very precise, technical, borderline legal definition, and I applaud you for that. But the answer I heard you give was yes, that any rational individual would take the benefits of using a cryptocurrency over the drawbacks of using the US dollar. So you are clearly a future politician, and that you know how to answer a question rather deftly. But I'm sorry to tell you, the connection we have is so atrocious. We're barely able to make sense of you. So I'm going to jump the danger of AI section, only because we'll consider that a promotion for your speaking services, given how articulate and what's the word I'm looking for here? Accessible, right? You're describing this stuff in a way that does not have the jingoism and the jargon that a lot of crypto people have. So I applaud you for that, because it makes these concepts much easier to understand, and I think you're offering them in a very accessible form. But before we end, let's talk about decentralization, because it strikes me that fundamentally that has been, correct me if that has changed, is still the focused desire of, as a technology, cryptocurrency, that it allows for greater resilience, it allows for greater distribution, so you don't have to move to New York, you don't have to move to San Francisco, you can connect to the global economy regardless of where you are. To what extent, a two-part question, to what extent do you feel that decentralization promise is being fulfilled, that it is still a core motivator for a lot of people in the crypto space? And second, what kind of political support? I like the word policy. What kind of policy do you think needs to be embraced, needs to be enacted to further pursue or fuel the decentralization that the technology offers on a potential level?
It is not living up to the decentralization ethos. I will say that there is this ethos that many of us, when we first got into crypto, like, hey, it's decentralized. It is not living up to its ethos in spirit. It's living up to the ethos in practice, in that I can be part of DeFi and I can utilize my magic internet money. I can change this one crypto to another crypto. I can be part of a liquidity pool. It's operating in sense of decentralization. But decentralization was about being able to create your own networks and then do business outside of those networks, being able to transact outside of those networks. That right there has not, because we have only thought about this technology from a strictly financial sense. I would say that 90% of the focus is on how can I make money on it, because we still really don't understand the technology well enough to utilize everything that it is available to us. The thing you said on a policy basis, things that need to be enacted is that there be a flat tax rate whenever there are transactions that happen when you're off ramping from crypto. So not that there's taxes every time that I make a transaction. Treat me the same way that you would treat stocks, right? And not only treat me in a way that you would treat me where I'm trading stocks, but treat me in such a way where I'm trading one digital technology for another digital technology, and I might experience an increase. But what we have seen, at least in the United States, is that, yeah, you can have 5 Bitcoin. Yeah, you can have 10 Bitcoin. Where are you going to spend it at? Who's going to accept it? Right? So until we get to that point, well, you have to off ramp it. Well, let it be a, whenever I off ramp, that there be a flat 15% tax on it, on whatever I offload. Why am I saying that? Because at least if I offload it, then that encourages me to make as much money as I can inside of it. And then when I decide to off ramp into fiat, now Uncle Sam is getting his, and I'm not worried about having to pay exorbitant taxes or trying to go through extensive transaction history to try to figure out, what transaction was this and how much did I make on this particular transaction. Take it on the off ramp. So the decentralization part, you have the decentralization as long as you stay within the crypto universe. But the moment that you come out, there's only a few places that you can come out. Coinbase, Gemini, crypto.com, used to be FTX, right? Used to be Binance in some ways, shapes and forms, right? So there are only a few places in which you can off ramp. And I mean, now if you even being able to convert your USDC, but that's a whole nother conversation.
And, very briefly, do you think those off ramps will increase in number now that the U.S. government is taking a friendly approach?
Yes, but not exponentially. Not exponentially. I could see there being I see more financial institutions that are creating crypto analogies of ETFs, of investment and investment vehicles. So the same way that you would have a savings 20-30 yield for a basket, right? Being able to have similar products for people who want to invest, but they want to invest in a managed kind of way, the same way that you would with Fidelity or things like that.
And let me ask you a kind of personal / professional question. Given that your labor is very highly skilled, and you're clearly a very capable and intelligent person, do you ever sell your labor for crypto rather than say U.S. dollars? Do you ever work with a client? Can you, without getting into details, can you sort of give us an example of kind of how you negotiate that? Given the fluctuating value of the crypto?
It's you tell people, hey, this is yesterday's price is not today's price. And so it really comes down to what is the equivalent of, there's a dollar equivalent for the crypto, right? There's always a dollar equivalent. So depending if it's a product, it's one thing. If it's a service, then I'm keeping it at the same price at market rates. And people oftentimes, those that are in the space, those that have crypto would much rather, those that have a lot of crypto would much rather pay you in crypto than have to go through the process of off ramping into fiat, because now you got to worry about taxes. Now you have to worry about all those things. And then those that don't sit on a bunch of crypto are trying to hold as much of it as they can.
Right on.
Right. So it all depends on what kind of person I'm dealing with. And sometimes it's so much easier just transacting in crypto. Send it to this address and let's go ahead and get the business, versus, okay, I got to get you my direct deposit information, or I have to utilize a Stripe account.
Well, and
there's simplicity in that, but
to that point, is your client base more international than the average American, precisely because you have access to these types of global payment systems?
it seems as if others outside of the United States get it. They get it, and they get it because they've had trouble with banking. They've had trouble trying to send international wires. And there's a level of, you have your business and you have your contracts in place. Right now we're consummating the transaction utilizing crypto. So you can still have those you can still have those things in place. It just requires an extra few lines in your contracts whenever you're dealing with folks internationally. But when you deal internationally and people have crypto, it's easier just to have them send you crypto or you send them crypto.
Right on. So before we go, I would be remiss not to ask you the question that's really on the minds of almost all the people who are listening to this episode, at least all the regulars who are listening to this episode. What's your take? And I say this in no small part because you clearly speak with a kind of lawyer's mind. What's your take on Trump's current language, current political position towards Canada? Well, looks like, oh, there we go. I thought we lost you.
It's challenging to figure out. No worries. It's challenging to figure out when he's serious, when he is being a marketer. Well, I'm trying to think of what's the best way of putting it. It's like when your mom says to you, if you don't do this, I'm gonna bite your head off. You know what I mean? Like you don't mean it literally, but you do know that there's some consequences on the result of it. You know she's not gonna do that. Yet you're looking at, okay, well, I wouldn't want it to be the 51st state. And the way that he said it wasn't boisterous or anything like that. It was like, okay, I've actually thought about this, and I think that there's actually literally a path forward. The calmness and way in which he said it, it indicated that there had been actual thought about it. What now? Does that mean that he is serious in making it happen? No, but I think that he's thought seriously about it. I'll say that. And I believe that was more of a signal to Canada of, well, if we're going to be subsidizing, if we're going to be supporting you in this particular way, if everyone around
Careful
us is
now.
safe because of how strong the United States is.
Because remember, I was asking for...
I'm just saying.
I'm asking for your esteemed analysis, not for you to necessarily repeat the rhetoric we've all heard many times, because where everything you were saying was solid, the argument that we are subsidizing, like, that's not only absurd, it's factually incorrect. And this is where you've done fantastic up until this point in the episode, because everything you've said has been factually correct. And the danger about the particular Trump administration is how loose they are with language. And as a lawyer, I'm sure that frustrates you on some levels. But as a marketer, you can respect the way in which language is used in this regard, especially in the vernacular. But with all due respect, you guys as a country are going to be fucked if you piss off Canada. And I say this because you get a lot of electricity from us, right? The reason that there's a trade surplus is we give you a lot of shit. And if you guys don't want that shit, you're fucked. Like, we'll be fine because we'll sell that shit to China. And we'll have absolutely no hesitation to sell that shit to China. But Trump won't be fucked, but you guys will be fucked. Because you won't have enough electricity to power your data centers. You won't have enough food to feed your population. And this is where we are kind of, what's the word? Not shocked, but bewildered. Because we understand that rhetorically he uses language in a very, bargain deal-making way. But when you insult and lie about your best friend, that's fuck around and find out territory. And I understand that the vast majority of Americans don't know anything about Canada other than maple syrup. But you're gonna find out really fucking quick. So again, I encourage those of you who have a voice to either make an effort to start learning about the trade relationship you have with Canada, especially someone like yourself who's interested in politics, who's interested in factual ideas, or hope that he's joking. Because it doesn't matter whether it's the 51st state, the tariffs he's enacting are leading to a domestic crisis in the United States that we don't understand why you're engineering it. We're going to be fine. We're happy to trade with China. We're happy to trade with Europe. We're happy to do so without tariffs, right? We're happy to have China come up and set up factories to create cheap goods to pump into America. But why you would cut off and make lies about the trade relationship we have, I don't understand that. So that's why I'm asking every American I meet, do you have any insight into what's happening here? Because never has a powerful country shot itself in the foot so flagrantly. And yet, to your point, there does seem to be some other smart policies happening elsewhere. So why is this one so completely self-defeating and self-destructive? Any insights?
Well, once again, you're looking at what are true trade relations between Canada and the United States, right? How much does Canada spend on our weapons, right? On the fact that that we sell F-18s to Canada.
Right? We don't want to buy those, right? Like, we only buy them because we have to, right? We'd much prefer to buy Chinese tech if we could, just for the record. It's cheaper.
Once again, is that it gives you the opportunity to identify what are the real relationships and what are the real drivers of that trade relationship. And it seems to be that there's this shaking out period of, okay, let's shake things out and see actually what falls.
But do you like being shaken out?
When you're in that, I would put it like this, is that when you are the one doing the shaking, you inevitably are also shaking as well. right? So you have to be able to understand where you stand, and it allows for the reset of a relationship. It allows for renegotiation of a relationship, and it
But
allows
no,
for you to have a better understanding of that relationship.
none of those things are true, my friend. You are repeating the rhetoric of somebody who has not been properly informed. While to your argument, he may be properly informed about crypto because he has some people who are around him who understand crypto. He does not have
Let me ask you.
anyone around him who understands Canada. And
Let
therefore,
let me ask you this question.
okay,
What makes you think that I'm repeating things about? What makes you think that I'm repeating things?
the words you're using fitting the argument that's being made that this is a reset of the relationship, and it's not. Right? For it to be a reset
I'm
of a
saying,
relationship, both parties of the relationship must consent to the reset. What you're getting on this side of the
no.
relationship is not a reset, it's an end. And whether it's an end because we're
Now,
annexed, or whether it's an end because we're dumped or cheated on or jilted, this is when I say that, I don't your analysis is astute, so I don't
if you get dumped,
disagree with
if you
what
get dumped, was that with your consent, or that was just something that was brought upon you?
a dumping is. The end of the relationship, not the
Right.
resetting. There
No,
is no
but I never.
resetting. But and this
What
is
I'm
where,
saying,
look, we're going to move to the last segment. Your analysis of their moves is accurate. Your understanding of what's happening in Canada is not. And this is true of many Americans for no fault of their own, right? Because it's not like your news or your information media environment seeks to educate you on your neighbor to the north. But because our audience, the people listening to you are that, I got to cut you off because I don't want them to have any hostility towards you, because you've otherwise been a fantastic guest and have provided us with an excellent analysis on the subjects you do know, but Canada's not one of them. So we are at our final segment, which is the shout outs. This is where we ask our guest to shout out anyone that they think we should know more about, that they think our audience should look up and follow or learn more from.
oh, let's see. You should learn more about the Atlanta Blockchain Center.
Right on. Can you tell us a little more about the Atlanta Blockchain Center?
The Atlanta Blockchain Center is probably the most diverse and premier blockchain incubators and blockchain centers in the United States. Like I said, located in Atlanta, Georgia, was founded by a tech founder with successful exits, and there's been plenty of great things that are coming out of the Atlanta Blockchain Center. One of the leaders of Stand with Crypto, Anthony Mathis, is a member of the Atlanta Blockchain Center. I'm part of the Atlanta Blockchain Center DAO, and proudly represent the Atlanta Blockchain Center.
And it's okay if you don't know this offhand, but for the AI that's transcribing this, you don't happen to know the domain name offhand, do you?
Ooh, Atlanta Chain on Instagram.
Okay, thank you very much. Atlanta Chain is the handle. And finally, where should our audience learn more about you and connect with you?
Absolutely. www.drjamarmontgomery.com. Dr. Jamar Montgomery on TikTok, Dr. Jamar Montgomery on Instagram, Dr. Jamar Montgomery on YouTube.
Right on. Thank you very much. I appreciate the education you brought us today in terms of crypto. Unfortunately, crypto is still a difficult area to really understand unless, like Doc Montgomery, you put in the work and wade in and understand it. And I think if there's a moral I would take from that, don't be a consumer, be a producer. If you're interested in an area, if you're interested in knowledge, make stuff. do stuff, because that is fundamentally the best way to learn. MetaViews is on all the socials. We're on Substack, we're on YouTube, and we're on all the podcast platforms. We'll be back again with another episode real soon. Until then, take care. And for those of us in the north, keep digging out of this snow. It doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. All right, take care.